All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another of our outdoor summer virtual event series. Absolutely delighted to have Dan Wallace with us tonight. Dan, can you give everybody a quick wave, please, so that they know? He's just explained that the front camera of his phone isn't working, so he's using the background, so he can't actually see anything, but he's definitely there. I mean, it's amazing to have you here, Dan. Olympic swimmer, I think silver medalist in the Olympics, world champion relay swimmer one time, 200 meter, 400 meter swimmer, absolutely blistering times in the pool. And then you've taken up cold water swimming. And the reason I really wanted to get you on one of these calls is to talk about the channel, because this summer you swam the English Channel. Well, there were bits of it where you clearly really struggled, and I'm going to try and show a video in a bit. But maybe we can just start. So just one other thing, I've got Lucy here as well. She's going to just monitor the chat. So if you could, if you do have questions for Dan, I know I've got some of you sent questions in advance, but if you have questions for Dan, pop them in the chat, and then Lucy's going to help moderate that for us as we go through, either picking them up if they're relevant at the time, or we'll come back to them at the end, something like that. Dan, tell us a little bit about yourself, about how you've made this transition from sort of elite Olympic swimmer and you've moved into sort of cold water swimming and channel swimming, and tell us a little bit about what that's been like and why you've decided to continue your swimming career in that way.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for having me on today, and for everyone that's listening. I'm really looking forward to just talking about the entire journey. And I think that what's really interesting about, at least for me now, I'm at the point where there's been several chapters within my swimming journey that I probably didn't see coming when I was still, in the swimming, in the pool bubble, I guess. Like, my first passion was swimming, and I took that to a competitive level. And I'm very fortunate that it was very kind to me in that arena, and I've come away with quite a few good results. But yeah, I think that it's really interesting that I'm starting to explore these other sides of swimming. It's not just about being the fastest swimmer in the world. It can be, trying ice swimming for the first time, even if that's just on the cold water dipping side of things. Obviously, I've just done a channel swim as well. So yeah, I didn't see these next few chapters coming to me when I first retired. And I don't like to use the word retired, but I retired from competitive swimming in 2018, and that was my decision to just stop competing. As I said, like, I was on the good side of the sport. I'd come away with some really great results and really great memories and lessons, and I felt like I was in a position where I could just say, right, that was one part of it. I can now move on to do something different. And I didn't know what something different was at the time. I'm now very much involved in swimming in a business side. So I run a swim school here. I've just got my hair's still wet. I've just come from lessons there, and I've also got an online swimming platform as well. And I don't think those would have happened if I had continued to kind of pursue these goals and dreams that I was fortunate enough to have already achieved. I didn't have to repeat anything. I was like, I've done that part, I can move on to something else. And I think that because of that decision, I've got a very healthy relationship with sport and with swimming. And a lot of high performance swimmers you see, I was just speaking to someone about this just yesterday, they get to a certain level, whatever that level is, whether it's international, age group, championship level. And when they stop, when they get to university or afterwards, like myself, they never touch the water again. And I think that's really sad. And I don't want to be one of them. So I want to swim for the rest of my life. For years I described myself as an Olympic swimmer. I just tell people that I'm a swimmer now, because swimming can be so many different things. It can be high performance, it can be competitiveness, it can be ice swimming, it can be channel swimming, it can be whatever. And I think that for me, when I realized that and I started to discover different sides of the sport, it just opened my eyes to, okay, you don't have to be done. It's not 0 or 100. It's not all in or all out. I think that I had that mindset when I first stopped as a pool swimmer. I was like, well, that's it. I'll probably never really do anything in the sport again. So yeah, I'm just really enjoying, like, discovering different different sides of the sport, different sides of swimming that I wasn't aware of, or not that I wasn't aware of, but that I've not tried. Like I still, to a certain point, really enjoy swimming. Like I don't want to be doing 20 hours a week. Definitely not like I used to do in the pool, but I still enjoy, going for a swim, whether it's with friends or whether it's for a specific goal, like the channel. I've always been goal driven, so I'm sure we'll touch on it, like maybe like what's next. I don't know what next is, but I've just really enjoyed, finding out different sides of swimming and what it can do for me.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about, first before we get to the channel bit. I know you've done some cold water stuff. I think you did the cold water championship events. How long was it from sort of stopping your pool swimming stuff until you discovered cold water swimming, and what was that transition like? Because a lot of pool swimmers are really terrified of cold water.
Yeah.
And even swimmers at an elite level, really accomplished swimmers. And what were your thoughts about cold water swimming before you did it, and how did those thoughts change when you experienced it, and how did you go about that process?
So I stopped competing in 2018, and I didn't pick up cold water swimming until like 2022 properly. I'm from Scotland, so it's always been cold water swimming if I go for like a sea dip or if I jump in the sea, even during the summer. So I've been around cold water, but I've never actually taken it seriously as part of something that like is a hobby of mine or something that I want to pursue and understand a bit more. So that was a big gap, but there was a bridging point in the middle, and I think it's important to talk about. So straight after I retired in 2018, so maybe it was 2019, I spoke to Kerry Ann Payne, who's a good friend of mine and was a teammate of mine, and she actually qualified me as an open water coach. And that was my first kind of stepping away from pool swimming into, okay, let's look at other sides of the sport. So I started open water swimming mainly from a coaching point of view, but I was doing trips and camps away, and I was getting experience of my own in the open water from a swimming standpoint and a coaching standpoint. And then from there, it then progressed into the cold water stuff. And obviously during lockdown, I think it was actually a bit earlier. So during lockdown, I think actually started when I was doing cold water dipping, and I think a lot of people were like that. And then that was like I was getting in the cold, and I was, get the endorphin rush, and I was getting warm again. And then and in 2022, I think, so towards the end of that, I started looking into like the actual ice swimming element of it as well, because I don't know if I've mentioned it in the intro, but like I love competing, and that's always, I think, going to be something I look for. And so when I realized, you can do the cold water stuff and you can feel great about yourself because it's so healthy for you mentally and physically. Oh, but you can also like, there's a competitive element to that. That was really exciting for me. So it was like pool swimming, open water swimming and coaching, cold water dipping, ice swimming. And that's kind of like the stepping stones for me. And I think it was a good way to do it.
Yeah. And you seem, I'm judging from your Instagram post, you seem to be really loving the cold water stuff and finding it quite exciting and challenging and even humbling, I think was one of the words you used.
Yeah. Like there's a big difference between, jumping in an ice bath for 5 minutes or even just jumping in the lake for 5 minutes and just like kind of sitting there still with your beanie hat on, and then actually, trying to like push yourself or perform like on the actual ice swimming side of things. So yeah, when I first started actually doing my first ever ice swimming competitions, what's great about it is that I started to understand so much more about my body, because I'd never been in those environments before. I've never gotten properly cold. I've never gotten cold and then tried to move my arms and legs as fast as I can and actually swim 100 meters or longer. So it was all this unknown for me, which I love because it's new things I'm learning about me. It's new things that I'm trying, but I don't particularly handle the cold well. And it took a while to figure that out. I was like, some people can just get in and they can swim and they just look like they're swimming normally in a warm pool. Whereas for me, it's a really, really big battle I have to kind of push myself through, even just physically. I'm blessed with high metabolism and that's great. But for cold water swimming, I could do with a bit more on me. So from a physical standpoint, I'm maybe not made for the cold. And then within my, I don't know, physiological build-up as well, like when I'm actually trying to output in the cold, I'm actually trying to, use my arms and legs fast and swim quickly. I found that really difficult. So yeah, it was humbling, but I liked that. Thought that
Yeah.
if it had been too easy, then I would be disappointed in a way.
Yeah, of course. And then moving on to the channel swimming, you were more of a middle distance, what we call middle distance in the pool, 200 and 400. And then you've gone on to swim the channel, huge, epic, long distance. And how have you made that transition from kind of a middle distance swimmer, incredibly fast middle distance swimmer, to a long distance swimmer? And what challenges have you found there?
Yeah, I think that comparing like my pool swimming and then specifically the channel swim, like they're completely different things. They both just are swimming in some way, but they are entirely different. Like my races used to be over on a good day in under 2 minutes and just over 4 minutes. And then my channel swim was like multiple hours, like almost 10 hours. So like they're completely different. You need a completely different skill set. Obviously the similarities are like the technique and the swimming ability. So because of the amount of hours I've spent in the pool, like I'm a very technical, good swimmer. My ability is very high. So going into the channel swim, I knew like that's fine. Like I've got great technique. I'm very efficient. I've always worked on my efficiency in the water and my relationship with the water and how my body's moving through the water. Even when I was training to go as fast as I can, the majority of my sessions were, 30-minute, really low intensity warm up where I'm just singling up my technique and going through drills and skills. Then there was obviously high intense parts of the session, but I spent so much time just working on perfecting my technique, and that definitely helped me for my distance swimming, because if you're a more efficient swimmer in the open water when you're trying to go far or for a long time, that's going to help conserve energy. And so I knew that was maybe one skill I could transfer. But like the ultra endurance, just doing something for multiple hours, like I was a complete novice. I've never done that before, like other than like qualifying swims. And I before the channel, I don't think I'd ever swam over 10 kilometers without stopping. So yeah, there was a lot of just unknown and a lot of skills I carried over. And I think what else I carried over as well from pool to open water, and specifically the channel, was my mental resilience. Um, I had to ask a lot of myself when I was a pro swimmer, especially at a young age as a teenager, like waking up at a certain time, then going to school and having that kind of time management and just determination and commitment from a young age. So when things got tough in the channel, which we'll dive into, I was prepared for that. I was never going to give up. I was closer than I would have liked, but yeah, there was loads of skills mentally that I carry over. There was a couple of technique skills that I carried over from pool to open water. But ultra endurance is completely new to me, which is exciting.
Okay, I think this is an experiment. I haven't tried this before on one of these things, but I'd like to try and share that video. It's just a clip from the video that you made of your channel swim. There's one clip in the middle, which I think really, well, let's just see if I can get it to play.
Yeah.
The sound quality might not come out brilliantly, but it's subtitled anyway, and it's only 40 seconds long. So this is just a clip from the middle of Dan's channel swim. And so, Dan, do you want to explain what's going on there and talk us through that bit?
Yeah, so that clip there was essentially when I was like, my mind was playing tricks on me, and it was saying, "You're out, you're in over your head, you've got nothing left." And essentially, that was me like really toggling with like, can I make it across? And at that point in the swim, I'm pretty sure I was maybe about probably 5 hours in, so still a fair amount to go. And I guess to walk you through what took me to that point, as I said, like anything over 2 hours, I've never done before, really. I did the qualifying swim, but that's low intensity. I wasn't, you know, I was trying to swim quickly across the channel. Like I was going for it. And that was my mindset. It was like, put yourself out there, get out quick and see how you hold on. So maybe it made it hard for myself in that sense. But the biggest worry was the cold. As I said, I don't handle the cold well. I've known that from the cold water and ice swimming. So I was prepared that like that's probably going to be the first thing, or hopefully not the first thing, but something that you're going to have to deal with. And it's out of my control. If it's cold, it's cold. I can't change the temperature. I can like prepare for, nutrition and things like that are going to keep me warm. But in my head, I was like, if I get cold towards the end, I can handle that. That's fine. If I get cold around the middle, then it might be a little bit difficult. If I get cold at the start, this is probably way too ambitious for me. I got cold within 90 minutes. I got really cold within 90 minutes, and I was like, "This is not good." So I communicated that straight away with the boat, and I said, "Listen, guys, like I'm feeling the cold. Can we speed up how quickly I'm getting my feed?" So I was feeding every 30 minutes, and they were helping, calorie wise, even just morale wise. They were warm, like it was nice. So I went from 30 minutes to 20 minutes. By that point, I was cold, and I was really, really like properly shivering 2 hours in. So my worst fear was coming to light. I just had to kind of push through, and then I was just focused on, still putting in the right amount of effort. But hours 2, 3, and 4, like I was probably swimming way too fast, but I just had to try and warm up. I had to try and stay in it and not just back off at any point. So by the time you saw that clip there, I'd already been through a world of emotions of like, you're finding this a lot harder than you thought. Like you're going fast, you're doing really well, but like this is you're asking a lot of yourself already, and you've got a long way to go. And then I basically said, how far have we got to go, or how far have we been in? And they told me, and I had a wobble, and I was like, nah, this isn't my day. I'm not gonna be able to do it. And then from there, it was just a 5-minute passing of, I don't think you can do this. This is way too, you've got so far to go and you're in so much pain. Like I was cramping, my lower back was spasming, my triceps were gone, my hamstrings were gone for some reason. And everything just wasn't working in my favor. So it was 5 minutes of thinking about all those negative things, which obviously you're not meant to do, but it's so hard not to. 5 minutes of thinking, this is too difficult to do. And then 5 minutes of thinking, you're gonna get through this. Like, you are who you are, like push on, you're doing this for a reason, remember why you're doing this, remember how you got to this point. So, and it was just negative and positive for 5 minutes at a time. That's very exhausting to do for 6 hours, because about the 4 hour mark, that's when I really had to start. I was going through these emotions. So yeah, that clip was a couple of hours into that, and I just kind of was in one of those 5 minute spells where I didn't think I could do it. But I do want to say, Tim Denyer, who was in the water there with me, he was my coach from Red Top Performance. Absolutely could not have done it without him. And Conor Mollison, who's my good friend and business partner, and also was on the boat. The support I was getting, they would not have let me stop. Even though I don't know if I ever had it in me to actually stop, but I was just like, yeah, vulnerable to the idea of it at points. Open to the idea of it, but I don't think I ever would have. But I was very close to it, and they were pretty serious, but never let me stop. So yeah, it was just like I was going through all these emotions that I didn't think I was going to have to do it 4 hours in. Maybe like the last little stint, I was going to have to really dig deep, and but that's just I was doing something that is completely new to me. And yeah, I'm a good swimmer, but I've never been an endurance swimmer, so that was also humbling, I guess.
Yeah. And then did things, I mean, obviously you went on and you finished the swim. Mentally, did it get easier after that point? Or did you find some way of, I mean, the cramps and the back spasms, did they go away, or did you find a way to manage them? Or how did you keep going with all of that going on?
Yeah, so the first thing I did was I just slowed down a bit. I was like, you're right, you need to just, it's not a race. I'd much rather just complete it than be on for a great time and then just hit a wall. So I slowed down slightly. it did meant that the cold was then just creeping back in. So I slowed down slightly, slowed down my stroke rate a little bit, just tried to make the swim element a little bit easier. And then for the physical pain I was in, so my back was like really, really going. Like it was very painful. So I'd been taking, I think it was every few hours I'd been taking ibuprofen. So then on one of the feeds they changed that to codeine, which I'd never had before, but that helped. So a bit of pain relief there, helped with the pain. And then I just, over a few hours of just being in this really dark place, like time passes, and then you realize, all right, I'm potentially 3 hours away now. That I can get my head around that slightly. Now I'm 2 hours away. Okay, I think you're gonna do it. Just kind of dig in. And those last 2.5 hours maybe, I got slightly warmer again because the water temperature rose slightly, and I felt that. So suddenly, like I wasn't as cold as I was. I wasn't having to sprint anymore. I was kind of just swimming in. The pain was going away slightly, so it got better towards the end. But like really, that middle chunk was like it was pretty terrible. It was pretty tough. But it got better.
It looked pretty terrible in that video.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that that video showed that, because there was times, and Connor, who was the videographer there was a lot that he didn't film because he's also my good friend, and he saw me going through a really hard time, and he didn't know whether to, show that. But we got a glimpse of it there. So yeah, that just shows you the emotions I was going through and how hard I found it. And I'm glad I can sit here now and say that I got through that, and I am an English Channel swimmer, because now I look back and I'm glad I was tested that way. Like that's just the way that my brain works. Like I like doing tough things, as long as they don't break you. You're going to come out with potentially different mindset, a stronger mindset, but certainly stories and lessons that you've learned. So I'm glad it was hard. I didn't think it would be that hard, but I'm glad it was.
Yeah. And do you think, I mean, because you're an Olympic swimmer, everyone knows that you're a really, really strong swimmer. And I think people outside of swimming don't appreciate the difference between a pool swim of 400 meters and a channel swim. I mean, they think, oh, this guy's a really good swimmer, he's going to breeze across the channel. Did you have that weight of expectation on you, do you think?
Yeah, I was having conversations with like even my family and just my friends, and they were just so blasé about it. I was like, yeah, I've got the channel in like 4 weeks. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll be all right, I'll be fine. And I'm like, it's a lot further than I normally swim, and I maybe fell into that trap of being like, yeah, I'll just do what I normally do. But it's like it's like Usain Bolt running a marathon. It's like he's not going to hold up well unless he's been training for a long time. It's a completely different discipline. So yeah, I think that I was, a lot of people didn't understand that, like, yes, it's swimming, but as we spoke about before, swimming can be so many different things. Channel swimming and 200-meter pool swimming is a different language. So yeah, but I like that it was different. So yeah, but it's like videos like this, being able to talk about it now, like people then understood, oh wow, that was actually something that you were not used to, and that you're not maybe like made for, or have much experience in. So they saw that I was challenged, and I'm glad that I was, because oh, it's an Olympian swimming the channel. But like you said, like for most people, they don't think that's that, and I guess that impressive in a way, but just because I was a good swimmer, also I was a good swimmer 10 years ago. I'm a different person now. I'm a bit older and a bit rusty. So yeah, it was a whole new ball game for me, but I'm glad I did it.
Yeah, well, I expect the audience here tonight understand what long distance swimming is about, and fully appreciate what you've done. I think they probably would have appreciated seeing that difficult spell, and understanding that you've had to go through that. Just on this idea of difficulties and this learning to become an outdoor swimmer and all the different facets of it. And I know you've talked about the cold a bit, and maybe that is going to be the answer to this question, but what's the hardest thing you found about becoming an outdoor swimmer and exploring this new world of swimming that you didn't know really have much experience of before?
Yeah, like the cold is the biggest thing I found, but you can manage it. So you can pick how long you're going to swim for, which is great. Like something I struggle with, just because of where I am geographically, I'm blessed that like the beach is literally less than a mile away. But quite often it's not very swimmable weather here. It's like it's choppy, it's quite rocky where I live. There's maybe big swell or it's very murky. So I've never really felt that comfortable like going out for any sort of proper swim on my own in the sea. Um, Whereas I've spent time teaching and coaching like over in Greece and it's beautiful. And I thought if I lived there, I'd be swimming like 5K in the sea every single day. So like the accessibility to actually do some proper swimming isn't ideal where I stay. There is an open water or a wakeboarding lake not far, but just they're not a full-time open water venue. So I've spent so many hours staring at the bottom of the pool. I don't have many more hours doing that. So I want to experience the outdoors. I want to swim outdoors. So it's just been finding the right places to do that. I wish I could do it more. I would be really up for doing it more. What's nice about the cold water stuff is it's just very seasonal. It's like, you know, from like maybe November to kind of March, like you're into the cold water either dipping or swimming. And that doesn't have that, you know, that can be quite a short um activity, I guess. Like, you know, you can go for a cold water dip and you can go down, you can get in, you can get out in 5 minutes and you can get dried off and you can be gone in 30 minutes again. So it's quite a quick little thing that you can do. And I've liked that. It's when it comes to like I would love to be able to do more long distance uninterrupted swimming, like where I live, and that just hasn't really been the case. And it's probably very different. So like this isn't really advice or anything because this is just my current situation, but you know, there's places all around the UK where you can, and I think that that's great. And I was working and living in London for a while, and there's a couple of great spots to swim outdoors there, and I made the most of that as much as I can because as a pool swimmer, when I had to tumble turn every 25 or 50 meters, it's such a nice feeling to just continually swim for however long, an hour, without having to change direction or you know push off a wall or stop. It's like I find swimming very therapeutic, and that's because I've worked on my technique to the point where if I want it to be easy, it can be really, really easy and relaxing, and that's like my happy place. So the open water gives me that because I can, you know, depending on the conditions and the temperature, I can make that swim like very comfortable and enjoyable. And I spent a week with SwimQuest. I have done the last few years out in Greece as a coach, but this year was one of the first, I don't know how, but it was the first year that I actually got to get in the water for one of the swims with them, and I did a full loop of the island, which is 10 kilometers, and that was like so nice because I just swam for 2 hours and didn't have to, other than just navigating around the island, I didn't have to worry about, first of all, didn't have to worry about the cold, so that was lovely. I didn't have to worry about stopping and starting and pushing off or whatever. It was such a peaceful place, and like those 2 hours were the happiest 2 hours I've had in a long time. So, I love the open water because it gives you that ability to just be free. I would love to be somewhere that it's maybe on a day-to-day basis more suitable to do that. But yeah, it's a lot of kind of cold dippers up here, and then like triathletes who you know are present during the summer and the wetsuit season, but then don't really stick around. And I don't know. I've not worn a wetsuit in a very long time. I don't think I can do it again. I think I'm just, but it just means it's going to be a tough swim for me. So yeah.
Okay, I've got one question on technique. And you've talked a lot about technique and how, as a pool swimmer, you spent hours and hours refining and perfecting your swimming technique. But obviously, you've perfected that technique for pool swimming. And when you get in open water, things are a little bit different. Even if you're in a calm sea, the buoyancy is a bit different. But as soon as you get a little bit of wind, a little bit of chop, waves, swell, anything like that, it's going to mess with your swimming technique. How do you modify, or do you modify your swimming technique to cope with that? Or is it a case of because your technique is already so good, if you get bashed about a bit, it can handle it? What's your sort of thinking on that?
Yeah, I think that last point there, like, that's probably a little bit true. Like, my technique's very sound. Where if I lose one pull because it's hit a wave, like I'm going to be able to pick it up again in the next one. So that helps. But I think that I definitely I try and keep my technique as similar to my pool technique as possible because I've realized that the way I swim in the pool is the most efficient way I can move through a body of water. So if that body of water has current or a little bit of chop, the goal is still to move through as best I can. So I don't have a different technique. I might have a slightly modified technique. So I might be okay with being a bit more up and down in my stroke because I need to kind of lift my head up at times. So getting a bit of undulation in my stroke rather than just kind of keeping it very linear to the side. But as far as like, especially what's happening underneath the water, so like my catch in my pool, even my rotation, that's like that should all stay the same because that's all your propulsion. That's all your power. So that should really always stay constant. I guess when I'm swimming slow in like not slow, sorry, when I'm swimming easy in the pool, my leg kick is the same as when I'm swimming easy in the open water. It's either a 2 beat or a 4 beat kick. I'll, you don't really see a 6 beat kick in open water unless you're doing a bit of a sprint finish. So from like, a kicking standpoint, it's the same. From a pulling and propulsion standpoint, it's the same. It's maybe just the arm recovery being slightly higher so that you're not going to get caught with a wave on your recovery. A lot of people have the high elbow recovery in the pool, but then opt for a bit more of the throwing the arms and a bit more of an open arm recovery. And that's totally fine as long as you can control the entry. But again, like things are going to be out of your control. You're going to get swiped with a wave at points, and it's just being okay to just pick things up again. So I try and keep my technique as similar as I can, but I know that it's not going to feel good. Like I was watching back videos of the channel swim, and we checked the weather like religiously every day, and I looked and I was like, "Whoa, I'm gonna get really nice conditions. I'm gonna get, you've seen those swims where it's like it's glassy water." I was like, "I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna get that." And in the first few hours, I was like, it's not what I'm. This is way more choppy than I thought, and I felt like I was in a washing machine, and my technique didn't feel great, to be honest. Especially next to the boat's going up and you're going down, you just feel like you're all over the place.
Yeah.
And then I looked at the video and it was actually quite nice. It was actually not that choppy at all. And I was like, So you're not going to feel as good, especially if it's like sea swimming. You're not going to feel as good. So it's just being okay with that and just being, still think of the little things like what's actually helping you move forward, body position, your propulsion underneath the water, making sure you're still rotating. Like those things should all stay the same, but they might just be influenced by other factors. And that's really it. So it's just finding that balance of being okay with it not being totally in your control, but then what is in your control still being really high quality.
Okay. I'm going to move on to some questions that people have sent in when they signed up. I've got one from Fiona. She's asking about tips for handling the cold, and obviously this is something you say you've struggled with quite a lot. And I know we spoke about it briefly before, and you said that one of the things you haven't been able to do is put on weight, which you try to do for long distance open water swimming. And so you're a relatively skinny guy. But you still managed to get across the channel. You did suffer from the cold, but how did you cope with that? What sort of tips could you give other people who might be struggling with the cold or worried about the cold on both on long distance swims and in ice swimming, I guess?
Yeah, so there's obviously there's different ways of what cold means, like handling the cold for like a cold water dip, handling the cold for ice swimming performance, handling the cold for like an endurance swim where it's not really cold, but over time it gets cold. So there's different ways to do it. So from like a point of like getting into like maybe sub 5 degrees, like proper cold, a way to handle that is you can just pick how long to stay in, but there's no secret to it not feeling cold. It's always going to feel cold, right? It's always going to pierce your skin. It's always going to cool down you internally, but you can get used to that. You can't change that. So it's just familiarizing yourself with that and deciding how long you want to endure that from a mental exhaustion, like how long am I okay with feeling uncomfortable and how long is it safe to feel uncomfortable. So kind of just understanding that and realizing you can get in and out as much as you want. Also, when it comes to like the proper cold water dipping and the ice swimming as well, is like preparing for your body to change. So making sure you've got, you know, your correct changing robe, you've got your towels, like you've got your routine down very well. So those kind of things help with dealing with very cold temperatures and making sure you, because the most important thing is making sure you warm up again. And then on the longer side of things, where you're maybe looking at like channel swimming, for example, where it's not nowhere near those temperatures, and at least not the English Channel, but you're having to withstand a long time in there. For me, and this was quite new to me, but as I said, Tim from Red Top Performance, he is very experienced with this. It's all about nutrition. So essentially, from what I've learned, is your body's basically burning calories to stay warm. It's like a fire inside of you. It's burning calories to keep blood moving, to keep, your muscles fueled and warm, and that's going to help your core temperature. So everything's having to work to just keep your temperature at a safe level. So those calories that's taking up energy is producing energy. So you have to just replenish those. So the nutrition is massive. I felt it physically, I felt it mentally. As soon as I had that feed, one, it was slightly warm, so mentally that's nice. It was a slight reset. I had like 5 to 10 seconds of maybe hearing a couple of words of encouragement from the boat, but physically, those 5 minutes after the feed, because it's all fast acting calories, fast acting carbohydrates, and kind of sugar as well. So you do feel it, like you physically feel, oh, you got a bit of a lift there, and then I would feel myself getting a bit more tired and a bit more colder, and then I would be looking my head up, being like, where's his feed coming? And then it was coming. So yeah, like the nutrition is really the biggest thing in the long distance stuff. Just the experience and knowing what cold feels like, and being as used to it as you can, and familiarizing yourself with your own body. And I spoke about this before, like I'd never done the cold before. I'd never seen how I handle the cold. We spoke about I've not got much on me, so maybe that's maybe why I handle the cold. But I think there's a deeper underlying, like my body just can't, I don't reserve enough energy to continue to swim as fast as I can whilst keeping my core temperature up. I don't think my body can do both very well. So it's understanding your own body and familiarizing yourself with being uncomfortable, being comfortable in those situations, being comfortable being uncomfortable, and then just being as regular as you can doing that. Like you don't have to go crazy with it. You don't have to push yourself to the extremes. If you just if you're going for an ice swim or a cold water dip in like properly cold temperatures, like just do it regularly. You don't have to do it for a very long time each time if that's going to be easier on you mentally. Because it's not nice knowing like, oh, I'm going to get in there and it's going to be really hard. It's going to be really uncomfortable. Like that's great to do at times, but everyone's a liar if they say they look forward to that. No one looks forward to that. But it's great for you. So it's just making it manageable for you emotionally, whereas it's not a chore. It's something you look forward to and you get a kick out of, and that stuff does help for the ultra endurance when you're going to get cold. Because I've been here before, like my body's struggling here, or I feel uncomfortable, but it's not the end of the world.
Okay.
Can I ask a question, Simon?
Yes, I've still got some from our.
Only because one person has actually specifically said, "What do you consider cold? Like, what's cold for Dan?"
Cold for me is a lot warmer than it should be, but no, there's different standards of cold. Like I've done, like 0 degrees, 1 degrees. That's like properly cold. I've done like ice swimming. I think the coldest when I was like properly ice swimming was 3, 2.5 maybe. Over in Romania, like that to me is really, really cold. Where I anything over 2-3 minutes, if I'm actually trying to swim fast, I'm not going to last much longer than that. So that for me is when my body doesn't really handle it very well. So that's properly cold for me. But I think anything that is where your body is having to counteract the temperature. So it's your body's having to stay warm. So anything lower than your normal body temperature, I guess. So, if I went for a swim now in the sea, like that would be, I think that's cold, but it's not cold where I can't not stand it. I could be in the sea probably right now for maybe 20, 30 minutes, and like it would be a workout. It would be tough, but it would be fine. So there's like different standards. It depends what you want to do. So if you're going for a cold dip and it's 15 degrees, it's probably not a cold dip. But if it's 15 degrees and you want to do, a 10K swim, then you're going to feel that cold's going to have an impact on that swim, whereas that cold's not going to have an impact on a cold dip. So different temperatures for different types of swimming, I guess.
Yeah. Lucy, anything else on cold before we move on?
Well, there was just an interesting observation right at the beginning, and it came from somebody that happened to be a timekeeper at the Winter Championships in Teignmouth in 2022.
Oh yeah.
And I wonder if you've dispelled how they felt. But at the time, because you looked so fast, it almost felt like you were cheating because you weren't in the cold for as long. And I wonder, unfortunately, they haven't posted anything else, but I wonder if they're still feeling like that, having heard you say what you've just said.
Yeah, hopefully not. Like, I mean, that is my mindset going into that was my first ever ice swimming experience, and it was great. It was my first experience with the ice swimming community, and it was so positive. But yeah, I was like, the faster I get this done, the less time I have to spend in the water. So, to a certain point, the cold might help you give that little, you get a real shock in it, right? Let's get this over and done with as fast as you can, for those short distances. But I've done a 500-meter 500-meter swim in the cold at the British Ice Championships, and that was really hard because I couldn't just go as fast as I could. I had to reserve my energy, so I was very aware of like this piercing cold and my body dropping, and then my energy just being zapped really, really quickly. Whereas like at the Teignmouth Marina, sorry, I was done in 28 seconds or something like that. So it was like 50 meters. I could just put my head down and go. So there's different ways you have to manage it, but it's a good way is get it over and done with.
Okay. So Victoria has asked just to share your top tips for non-Olympians who might consider a channel swimming attempt. If you sort of just
yeah.
What have you seen in your channel swimming journey that might be of value to some of us that haven't spent 20 years perfecting our swimming technique like you did?
Yeah, well, but I think that we've explored that even though my technique was good, that was really all I had as far as like a toolkit that was going to give me an advantage. So I think every swimmer should always work on their technique and understand how their body can more efficiently move through the water, because that's going to make everything easier, no matter what your goals are, whether it's you signed up for your first triathlon or your first open water, like 1.5K or 5K, or you want to do the channel. Like, technique is going to be the foundation of how easy that feels. So that's always something you should focus on. But I was out. There was several other boats out there, and I had so much respect for every other channel swimmer that was out there that day, because I was the quickest by quite a few hours. I didn't have another minute left in me. So, some of those swimmers that are out there for like 16 hours, I'm like, that's so, admirable that you were able to just push through. And maybe they were more prepared in other areas of the swim than I wasn't. So yes, I'm an Olympic swimmer, but when it comes to channel swimming, I really only had one thing to my advantage, and that was like, yeah, I'm a very sound technical swimmer. So I think that you should never be put off by doing something that is, like, not only Olympians can do the channel. In fact, there's not many Olympians that have done the channel. The vast majority of people that do the channel are people that want to push themselves and want to achieve something like really incredibly special. So you don't have to be an Olympian to swim the channel. I think that's maybe a slight misconception, that you have to be a great swimmer. You obviously have to be a swimmer that you understand swimming and you're passionate about improving. You can't go into it in a vulnerable technical position, because your technique breaks down. Like, doing something for however many hours, you have to be a certain ability to push through something like the English Channel. But yeah, there was a lot of other swimmers in there that day that were nowhere near my standard of, maybe technical ability, but they all did it, and they probably made it look easier than I did at times.
Yeah. So I've got another question on technique. Actually, is that something you've been talking about a lot?
Yeah.
This is the question about it's about, can you do drills to practice your technique in open water, or do you have to do if you really want to work on your technique, do you need to be in the pool?
Yeah, I've always struggled with this, but I've done a lot of coaching and teaching both in the pool and in the open water, and like I just think it all depends on what that open water environment looks like. Is it a lake where it's fairly flat? Is it the sea where there's like waves, swell, and chop? Like, because from a technical teaching point of view, you want the most controlled environment so you can actually work on that technical element. You're trying to work on a technical element, or you're doing a drill where you're in a slightly more vulnerable position, just so that you can work on maybe just to catch, and you're just kind of like holding one arm up or something, like, and you're not producing much propulsion. If you then have a wave come over the top of you, it just ruins it. So there's some drills you can and some drills you can't. And there's open water specific drills that are only really taught in the open water, like sighting and turns, and kind of just having a better awareness of where you're going. And those are all done in the open water. But I do think that I would never say no, you can't. But especially if you're teaching something for the first time, they want to have a good understanding of how it should feel. Like, swimming is so much feel based. Like, how does it feel? I can tell you technically, mechanically, what it should look like, but really that's me just giving you words to then base off how it should feel. So I'm going to ask you, like, think about swimming from your fingertips or something, or having, soft kicking. I'm not describing what to do technically there. I'm just telling you how you should be thinking about it. So if you ask somebody for it to feel a certain way, and they've got a current coming over them, or they're too cold, or there's waves or something, then that's going to ruin their feel for the water. So on those kind of technical points, for me, I definitely think it's better to teach in the pool and then take that into the open water, or practice your technique and thinking about those areas in the open water, and perfecting it for that environment. But I do think teaching it, because it's not just about technically what am I telling them to do, but how it should physically feel, mentally and physically, I think having a more controlled environment definitely sets them up. But I've been teaching technique sessions in the outdoors for well over 5-6 years now. So I've done it. But there's an ideal environment for me, and that's probably a more controlled environment than the Scottish Sea.
Okay. Lucy, what else have we had coming in on the chat?
Well, actually, I wanted to tell Dan that you have won over your audience.
No,
And your slightly skeptical timekeeper has just given a lovely vote of support for you. But it just generally feels like they're expecting you to be kind of a guru for all epic challenges. So there's somebody in the audience who's doing an ultra marathon running, 230 kilometers in 5 days, Arctic running. This is temperatures up to -40. So they're just hoping that you've got some kind of transferable toolkit advice.
I'm a terrible runner. I've tried it, so I'm not going to give you any running advice. But I think that, there's you just need to figure out like what your why is. Like, why are you doing this? Because you're going to have to ask yourself that at points. I had to ask myself that in the channel. I've had to ask myself that other times if I'm doing something hard. Like, why are you doing it? Do you have a really strong reason for doing it? Is it just something you want to do? Like, what's the goal? How do you want to feel at the end of it? Because that's what's gonna kind of just bring you out those painful moments, or those times where it's just getting a bit on top of you, or maybe like me, you don't think you can do it at times. It's like you have to just remind yourself, either how far you've come to even just get there, and believe. Like, self-belief is massive. Self-belief is like what turned me from just an age group swimmer at 17 to potentially someone that could go on to do great things. I just one day just went, oh, actually, no, I think, why not me? So believing in yourself that you can do it, and just being familiar with your reasoning for doing it on that day. whatever that looks like. You know, what if it's goal specific, like I want to do a faster time because that's important to me, because it shows that, you know, my commitment and dedication has paid off. I'll be proud of that. I want to win this medal, or I want to, you know, have the stories of, you know, completing an ultra endurance run or whatever it is. So yeah, figure out what your why is, because you're going to have to ask yourself that, and use that as positive fuel. And yeah, put one foot in front of the other, I think, is the technical advice for running, and just keep going.
One person has also asked, would you swim the channel again?
Yeah. I got asked this like the day after, or even the day I did it.
Bit soon.
So that was way too soon. Now, I think probably no, but I never say no to things. So last year I swam the channel as part of a 5-person relay. It's called Meter by Meter. It was me and a few of my teammates from different parts of my career. 2 of them, Ross and Jordan from Edinburgh, and then Jack and Harrison, who I swam with over at the University of Florida. And then also we had my friend, my other teammate Connor, who was kind of like project manager and videographer. So it was a great collective group of like some of my closest friends. We did it for charity, and we raised like over £200,000, which was like, so that our why for doing that was so strong and so clear cut. So like that was so special. Obviously, it didn't have that element to my solo swim, but it was just more of a solo challenge, like doing it for me. So if there was another really great cause or why to do it again, I don't think it would have anything to do with me, because I don't need to swim the channel again. But if it was for something to maybe, if it was obviously just charity focused, or there was something along those lines, then maybe. But I'm still so new to the endurance swimming. Like, there's so many great swims to do. So, and the English Channel was like a big one to get ready for, and it took a lot of time, the build up to it. So I think most swims will do that. So kind of got to pick and choose. If I want to do another endurance swim, what's it going to look like? My friend Andy Donaldson, who you guys have probably heard of, just swam around Manhattan. Now that looks incredible. That looks really cool. So maybe it's something different. I've always been someone that I'm never too excited about doing the same thing over and over. I always like to try things new, potentially even just once at times. I just like to try things and explore things and see how I handle it or how I enjoy it. So the channel, unless there was a big external factor of why I should be doing it, then maybe. But I think I'm going to try something different. Maybe I'll swim around Manhattan one day. Maybe I'll swim somewhere that has a bit more visual stimulation other than just jellyfish in the boat, because that wasn't that fun. So yeah, I think I'll look elsewhere for my fix.
Anything else from on the chat, Lucy?
No, that's the main thing, actually.
Okay.
I had a question,
Yeah,
if I'm allowed to ask it.
of course you are.
Because I'm a middle-aged, bog standard club swimmer compared to you. And now I feel a bit silly for thinking that the open water is sometimes kinder to me than the pool. Because you've made it sound like it's brutal, and I know it can be, but sometimes I feel like it's kinder. Do you ever feel that as well?
No, I definitely think that it's kinder. I spoke already before about this long swim I did out in Greece, and how happy I was, and I felt great in the water then, and my stroke felt good, and you can sometimes use, you know, if there is like slight waves, especially if you've got the wind behind you at times, like the conditions can work in your favor. They can also make it harder, and I think that maybe I was speaking maybe almost too negatively on that, but I have so many great memories in the open water, like things to look at, doing something in cool places. Like, you don't really get that from going to your local swimming pool. So immediately, like, you're doing something that's probably better for you, and you can feel good. Swimming in the salt water, you'll feel great because you've got extra buoyancy. If you swim with a wetsuit, you'll probably feel pretty good because you've got extra buoyancy and support as well. You know, if the conditions are quite nice, then you will feel good mentally and physically. So yeah, I didn't feel good during the channel, but like I felt good loads of other times in the open water. But you might feel more in control of your technique in a pool. Doesn't mean it won't feel good in the open water. It might just feel different. But you know, I quite enjoy going in and just being a bit higher up in the water, or kind of just being a bit more loose and relaxed and not worrying too much about my technique, more just about kind of enjoying swimming in the sea. And it definitely does feel good at times doing it that way.
Okay. And we're close to the end, Dan. So you've got a short opportunity to tell people a little bit about what you do now. I know you do some swim coaching, and you've got your swimmer.com business. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you could put, how you help swimmers now?
Yeah, so you guys probably picked up on I talk about technique a lot. It was something that I focused on a lot as a swimmer, and it's the #1 way to improve in the water. Whether you've either never been taught the right technique or you know your technique can improve. If you want to swim effortlessly, and I've described when I go for a swim it being easy. If you ever want to feel like that, then technique is the first place to start. If you can improve your technique and you have a goal that you want to hit, you want to be a faster swimmer, fitter swimmer, you want to sign up to a competition or an event, whatever it is, you can then take that technique and apply it to your goals and train towards those goals at different intensities or programming or whatever it is. The technique is the foundation of that. And I've realized that over years, because I was so technique focused, I have all this understanding about technique, how it should feel from a first-hand basis, how it should feel for you. But then over the years, understanding how to teach that, how to articulate that, just little cues to think about, not overcomplicating it. So myself and Connor Mawson, who I've just mentioned a few times, who's been very heavily involved in my swimming career my entire life, and especially in this open water side of it. I've created an online platform called swimmer.com, Swimmer HQ on Instagram, and essentially we offer online courses that are kind of technique focused, really breaking down how things should look and feel, like common examples. Like I've coached hundreds, potentially thousands of swimmers, and there's only so many things, only so many ways to do it wrong, and there's only a couple of ways to do it right. So like I can understand how it feels and looks for most people, and we can kind of teach how to correct that in a very streamlined process. So we've got online courses, and then we've got programming alongside of that. So if right now we have a freestyle efficiency course, which is a little 5-day teaser. How efficient can you get in 5 days? You test yourself on day 1. You run through these courses. You get 5 lessons, 5 sessions, and then you see how much you've improved. And we've had 100% success rate in that. Nobody has not seen a very noticeable improvement. And we've just opened up a waiting list for our first full course, which is like a freestyle masterclass, and it really just dives into every single element of the freestyle technique that I think and that I've seen really, really improves people. Because I want everyone to, even if it's for 1 stroke or 1 length or 1 day, feel really happy and good in the water. Because I feel like that most times, and I feel very lucky to go in and it be therapeutic and it not be a struggle. I am not breathless, and I just want to make everyone feel like that. And this is an amazing way to do that. I've had so many messages over the last few years of people asking for advice and me never really knowing how to give it to them in the right way. So Swimmer just does that, and we're really excited to kind of continue helping swimmers all around the world, whether you're looking to learn for the first time the correct techniques, whether you're doing Ironmans or triathlons, whether you're doing open water swimming, you signed up for your first charity event, Swimmer is the place to go for that.
Dan, what's the URL? I'll pop it in the chat.
www.swimmer.com. So it's like swimmer without the E. And yeah, we're very community focused. We've already got an amazing community already of swimmers that have, either joined a course or just heard about us. We're very active on our social media. We've got a really nice following there, and we just give you guys daily tips, because I think it's important to share as much as we can. We've obviously got our courses, but we're building a really nice community as well around it. So yeah, that's been exciting.
Okay, well, I've popped that in the chat, and I've popped your Instagram in the chat as well, so people can find you.
Thank you.
And we're out of time. That was so interesting. Thank you very much, Dan. Lots of really fascinating insight there. And I don't know if Lucy, if anything else has come up in the chat in the last couple of minutes. There's anything else
I think you've just wowed people. They've all just gone really quiet.
I've shocked them.
But it is actually so lovely to hear a swimmer who's been so awesome to still be so in love with swimming, because
Yeah.
I've heard people always talk about how burnt out they are, and it's so inspirational to hear you say, I just want to have more swimming adventure. And I kind of feel like that's how people are feeling.
Yeah, and I think that's really nice to hear, because I do still love swimming, because there's so much more that I haven't even looked into yet within the swimming side of things. So like, it's not, swimming isn't one thing, and I thought for a while it was, because I was in this competitive bubble, but swimming can be whatever you want it to be. So I think you should always, we're all just swimmers, and we do it in different places and different disciplines at different levels, and that's what brings us together. It's really nice.
Awesome. What a great way to end it. Thanks very much, Dan.
Perfect. Thanks for having me, guys.